Welcome to Dad Gives Advice. My name is Orestes, and in this video I'm starting a series on cognitive biases. This is an area of critical thinking and logic that I wish I had learned a lot earlier in life, just like all the other stuff on my channel. It's one of those things that they don't teach you in high school, and that's a shame because it's something that all humans are carrying around with them every day, and many of us don't even realize it. And these biases are kind of natural. They're the result of the way that we evolved. See my video on the Selfish Gene book by Richard Dawkins for more info on that topic. Basically, we humans, in order to survive in dangerous environments where lots of things could kill us, developed shortcuts in our brains that allowed us to make quick judgments about potential threats. The classic example is that if we hear some rustling in some thick brush, we immediately think it might be a predator, so we run away. If it was just the wind, then that's called a type 2 error, and there was no harm, no foul. We ran away because of the wind, nothing happened. If it was actually a predator or a dangerous snake, then we survived. We ran away and lived to pass on our cautious genes to future generations. If we don't react to the noise and it's a dangerous predator or a venomous snake, then we may not live to survive another day, and we don't reproduce, and we don't pass on those questionable genes that caused us not to react to noise in the bushes. And this is good. These are the kinds of reactions you want to have in quick thinking situations out in nature. But there are drawbacks to having type 2 errors being confirmed, and that results in cognitive biases. Throughout the evolution of humans and human societies, we were always faced with situations that required a quick reaction and quick thought process and a quick decision making. And in some cases, we still are faced with that today. Sometimes quick decision making is absolutely necessary for us to be able to save ourselves or to save someone else who's in trouble. But that tendency towards quick decision making can have a backfire effect in the form of cognitive biases that can cause us to make incorrect decisions based on false or inaccurate information. You might protest here and say, well, quick thinking and instinctive behavior got us to where we are today. It allowed us to survive all these many years, so what's wrong with it? While that is true, and we should engage our quick thinking instinctive behavior when we are in a life-threatening situation, in modern times we have the luxury of being able to think slowly through certain situations that don't require an emergency quick reaction. So for this video, I want to cover a big bias that causes us many problems in the way we interact with each other and the way we deal with important subjects and decisions. And that is confirmation bias, which may be the granddaddy of all cognitive biases. Simply put, confirmation bias is when we look for facts, information, or even falsehoods that confirm our preconceived notions about a specific topic and ignore facts or data that contradicts our preconceived ideas and feelings. It's taking all of the hits into consideration and ignoring all of the misses. Almost all humans do this because it is part of our nature, but it's important to recognize when this is happening inside our minds so we can make better informed decisions. Most of us want to believe in as many true things as possible and to not believe things that are false. Confirmation bias is a kind of defense mechanism that keeps us from thinking that a strongly held belief might be false or untrue. We gather around others that believe the same things. Online, it's worse than just about anywhere else. Today, we can get into online groups where no opposing view will ever be presented, and it can affect all sides of the political spectrum. Confirmation bias is not just a problem on the right or the left, or for libertarians or authoritarians. It's everyone's problem. If you're human, you're susceptible. A good example is the gun debate in America. After a mass shooting in the United States, one group will cling to any information that says that it's completely a mental health issue, while ignoring that other countries with similar levels of mental illness do not have the same kinds of mass shootings that the United States has. On the other side, the group will say that the shootings are entirely the fault of the guns themselves, and we have to eliminate all guns, while ignoring that in some situations, guns can save the life of an individual, especially when trying to defend themselves against a stronger, bigger opponent. The nuanced approach of treating guns as dangerous products that need to be well regulated is hard to come to if you're clinging to one of the two extremes due to this confirmation bias. The important thing here is when thinking through a debate or issue and arguing one side or the other, whether you're ignoring crucial facts or evidence that refutes your position. This is really hard to do because we all want to be right and we hate admitting when we're wrong, but we all should try to recognize when this is happening in order to have better conversations. A good way to look out for confirmation bias and see if you can spot it is this. When you encounter a new piece of information or news that looks like it confirms your pre-existing belief or stance, and it's the kind of thing that you really wish were true, try not to immediately take it as true or fact. Try to verify whether this new piece of information is actually true or whether it's something that you really wish were true and you're not going to even look into whether it's true or not. I've done that. A lot of people I know have done that. It's just natural behavior. What is hard is taking the next step and seeing if you can verify whether something is true. Something as simple as doing a web search and seeing what news outlets are reporting this piece of information, whether it's some obscure website that leans hard to one direction or the other, or if it's a respected news media or multiple respected news media outlets putting out the same information. There are people in the public eye with huge followings that exhibit confirmation bias all the time. A good example is Joe Rogan. He has the most popular podcast on the planet with a huge audience, but he might be the king of confirmation bias. I'm actually a huge fan of comedy and I enjoy some of Rogan's bits. The problem is that he gives a platform to people who have fringe opinions or fringe information about very important topics like COVID and accepts their positions without consideration to information that refutes or debunks them. He seems to look for people who are putting out information that agrees with his preconceived notions and ignores those who have opposite views, which is classic confirmation bias. The constant platforming of people who put out ivermectin as a potential therapy for COVID is a classic example. The studies that backed up ivermectin claims at the time were all retracted or debunked, but I don't think Rogan ever retracted his support. To be clear, the ivermectin story may not be over. There's still studies going on to this day, and in the future we might see some new information come out that says that either there is no link between it and helping COVID-19 patients, or it actually hinders those patients, or they may find that it does help in some way. We just didn't know any of this at the time that Rogan was putting this information on his podcast. So it was irresponsible of him to do so at such an early stage, before everything was known about this drug and how it interacts with these patients. Another concrete example from the real world was an online post that said that there was a group of leftists running a child trafficking ring from a basement of a Washington, D.C. pizza parlor. This news got out on social media, and those that had a preconceived notion that people on the left were the kind of people that would do this kind of thing and are evil believed the story. One man even drove down to D.C. with a gun, burst into the store only to find no kids, no traffickers, and no basement. He was later arrested for brandishing a weapon in Washington, D.C., which is illegal. The other side of the political spectrum is just as vulnerable. When sharing information about police who have killed a suspect as a result of a traffic stop or some other violation, people on the left will tend to share only stories about African Americans being killed by police, while ignoring people of other races who are killed by police in similar ways all the time. This is not to say that there isn't a potential issue with racism with police or an issue of training. It simply points out that confirmation bias is real and it works at all levels, across all kinds of people. And it is keeping us all from having important and substantive debates about serious issues. It's keeping us from being able to make progress as people on both sides look for confirming evidence that supports their preconceived notions and dig in their heels and ignore evidence on the other side that should bring the two groups together. We all need to be more vigilant about these issues, where we don't have to think fast and take our time and figure out whether what you just heard is actually true or is it something that you wish was true. At the very least, check the source and check to make sure that that source is corroborated before spreading any kind of new information that you wish were true. Our society is currently more divided than it has been since probably the Civil War, and in my opinion, one of the big factors is this confirmation bias. And most of us walk around not even knowing that we have this flaw in our brains because we're not taught about cognitive biases early on in life. The more we realize that we have to actively fight against this knee-jerk reaction thinking, the faster we'll be able to have more nuanced conversations that will help unite us in coming to better solutions to our biggest national concerns. It's important to have strongly held beliefs, but it's also important to have an open mind and be willing to change your beliefs based on new information that refutes a belief. This is one of the ways that science works. Scientists form hypotheses based on their observations and the experiments that they run to either confirm these hypotheses or falsify them. Once they've found enough evidence that clearly shows that their hypothesis is falsified, they give it up and go on to study something else. If they only find results that show that their hypothesis is true, they don't immediately say, well, this is now a fact, this is real, there's nothing that can change my mind. They now call that typically a theory, which then needs to stand up to further scrutiny. In science, a lot of questions are almost ever really settled. There's always more information and more observations to be made in order to confirm, modify, or falsify hypotheses and theories. If scientists were to act like ordinary humans in the discovery of science, there'd be different camps of scientists that are entrenched in one belief or another, and they may never come to consensus. And that just isn't how it works. There are some scientists that are stubborn and they end up going to their grave not buying some new theory or sticking to their guns on a theory that others think is incorrect. But typically over time, those with wrong ideas or incorrect ideas either give them up or they die off, and then the next generation comes around and follows up on the good ideas and gives up the bad ideas. A key takeaway of the confirmation bias story is this: we are hardwired to see things as black or white, rather than seeing that most difficult issues come in many shades of gray. It is in that gray area that we can find some common ground and move to find solutions that will allow for better outcomes for everyone. So keep an eye out for confirmation bias whenever you come across a new piece of information. Make sure to think slowly and figure out whether or not this thing is true, or whether or not it's something that you really wish were true and you're not going to look at it too much deeper than that because you don't want to find out it's not true. Those are the kinds of things that we need to slowly consider to make sure that we're not entrenched in a camp that is full of bad ideas. There's a nice article on confirmation bias on Britannica.com. I'll put a link in the video and in the description. Let me know if you have any questions about this topic and whether there's any other topics you wish I would cover. Other than that, thank you for watching and have a great day.